Chapter 3. Captain Dorian rushed out the door and north through the corridor, trying to get to the captain's station before the computer system had completely shut down. The enlisted personnel, consisting of males and mostly females, made a nervous dash to their pods. While the officers were huddled at the command deck, trying to correct the malfunction and waiting for the captain, the officers not on duty with Dorian came hastening in behind him. "Where is the navigator?" he said, out of breath and glancing around. Everyone kept their eyes glued to their computer screens and the window in front of them, as they frantically tried to bring their computers online. "You said the navigator could have the week off on Ovid. Don't you remember, Captain?" A young lieutenant said with a baffled look as he stared at Captain Dorian. All Dorian could remember was that he wanted to be near Jessie and lay with her and get the release her body promised. He remembered he wanted to sleep with her, and that was all that entered his brain and mattered at that time. His body was exhausted and he couldn't fall asleep, but he needed to rest. He had allowed the second in command to release the duty slip and fill out and post who would get a vacation. Dorian wasn't going by the books, he made his own rules. There were no others to hold him accountable, except the Lieutenant Commander McMasters, his second in command. And where was he anyway? Dorian didn't have time to dwell on McMasters. He was in charge. He was the captain of this vessel, and the responsibility lay at his feet, and he was the one who would lose his ship because of his lust for Jessie, which would cost him and his crew dearly. He couldn't blame her. She was only a young recruit when he first met her. And even now at 22 she still has that look of an adolescent, innocent and impressionable, as the first day he met her, ready to be molded into an officer. He remembered that although Jessie was more than competent, and she should have been promoted, he would never let her stand beside him on the bridge. She was too tempting and alluring for him to even consider her as the next in command. She would undermine all that he stood for, and he could never be anything to her, and with a woman like her, he thought she deserved something better than a captain who was married to his ship and who would live and die on that spaceship. "What is the status, Lieutenant?" Dorian said. "While you were sleeping," the young lieutenant said, looking the captain in the eyes, "we were hit by something. We don't exactly know what. It could be an asteroid, lightning, or that ship that's somewhere out there using a cloaking device." The computer shut down. Everything shut down except that damn artificial voice. "We're running the ship on manual power now." The lieutenant, a tall man of 30 with red hair and a square jaw. He had a nervous look in his blue eyes, but he kept his nervousness under control. He was an academy man, and he knew how to calm others even under difficult circumstances. Dorian looked to his right and gave the crew a warm smile, signaling good job and carry on. He was usually a serious man, and rarely did he smile. But lately he had been doing just that, and it was due to his relationship with Jessie. Whether he thought it wasn't a good idea to have a relationship with her, his crew thought the opposite. They were all for it. Being with her made him appear more human. Dorian thought he was the only one who knew about his feelings for Jessie, but the entire crew of 2000 knew, and they whispered among themselves. They noticed that he no longer took his meals in his room, but found time to visit the crew's cafeteria just at the same time Jessie came. She would see him and blush and then leave. She never ate there. The crew assumed she was too shy to eat in front of the captain. Everyone noticed how they eyed each other. It had become impossible for that to be kept quiet. The crew of enlisted personnel saw how he behaved when she was around, and how the computers reacted, and how Thalia, the electronic voice, would go crazy with messages. But hardly anyone noticed that the computers would go offline constantly when they were near each other. The engineers began to notice and suspect something unusual was happening, but they couldn't figure out just what. And with little effort, they were able to correct the anomaly. "Has all the enlisted personnel gone to their pods?" Dorian asked, walking around to the computer stations. They're in the pods now and ready when you are, the lieutenant said. We need to be close to the neighboring planet for this to work, and to get them safe into the orbit. If for some reason the planet isn't in the Alliance, we could be putting the entire crew in jeopardy. I need the assistant navigator, Captain Dorian said, glancing around at the station. Where is she? We have none, McMasters said, walking up to Dorian and leaning over and glancing at the computer screen. His deep eyes telling Dorian that they were in trouble. He could read McMasters' expressions and body language because they had been together on the Star Splitter for 10 years. Dorian said nothing because he didn't want to alarm the officers who were more aware of the situation than Captain Dorian, since he had been away from his station for over 12 hours as they worked desperately to restore what power they have now. McMasters had gone to find Dorian and couldn't, and returned immediately to the flight deck to commandeer the ship without him. Where is the auxiliary engineer, McMasters? I don't care if they are an apprentice, I need an engineer or someone who can get this ship working and get my computers running. All we have is a communication engineer. What about the artificial intelligence? I'm sure it didn't go on vacation, Dorian said, staring at McMasters. Before McMasters could say a word, there was a soft voice coming from behind Dorian. I can perform the job, Jessie said in a low voice, looking up at Dorian when he made a quick turn. Then her eyes settled on McMasters. I thought I said for you to stay in your room. And don't come on this bridge, and ready yourself for your pod. Didn't you hear the orders? Dorian said, his voice harsh and his brow furrowed. If I can help, then why don't you let me, she said to him. Her eyes steady. Now I want all the females in the pods, and especially you. Including the ones on the bridge. Now go. You are under orders, Dorian said. His voice hard and exact. His face without emotion, and that of a captain in charge of his ship and crew. This was the face of power. The officers became quiet, and everyone waited as two females stood. One human female and one alien from the planet Ovid. The female from Earth said, I want to stay, Captain Dorian. He turned and flicked his eyes in her direction. Who are you and what is your job? No, my question is, can you navigate? My name is Daniela, and I'm an astronaut apprentice, and no, I can't navigate. I haven't gotten that far. Dorian turned away and watched at his crew. Then you are of no service to this ship at this time. And you must leave. But I just arrived. Then you must know that my word is final, and I don't have time to argue with you or write you up for insubordination. These men have signed up to be the last off this vessel, and I want you into your pod now. Jessie will take you there. Daniela glanced at Jessie. I know my way, Daniela said. And she snapped a salute, and quickly turned and marched out of the command station and down the corridor. Jessie watched Dorian. She had never seen him so challenging and inflexible. She turned and rushed away. She didn't care what Dorian said. If they had any chance of survival, she would have to go to the computer and engine rooms and try to bring the whole of the ship back online. It was drifting in space, and if he had to jettison the pods, heaven help the souls inside them. Jessie made her way down to the engine room. What are you doing in my space? A cold, stern voice said. The artificial intelligence stood glaring at Jessie with a murderous look.